Hello, everyone. Welcome to Or This. This is my Monday morning quarterbacking of the scriptures and the sermon for the previous Sunday, although this is more of Wednesday morning quarterbacking this week. And I apologize for the long hiatus for Or This, but I'm hoping to get back into the swing of things again and have a weekly video where we talk about the scriptures from the previous Sunday. This video is reflecting on the scriptures from Sunday, January 19th. And the scriptures that were assigned for this Sunday are Isaiah 62, verses 1 through 5, Psalm 36, verses 5 through 10, 1 Corinthians 12, verses 1 through 11, and John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. I preached on the text from John chapter 2. That is the story of the wedding at Cana, Jesus turning water into wine. And amongst the number of things that I mentioned in the sermon, one of the themes that comes out in this passage is the theme of the abundance of God being revealed in the midst of humanity. Jesus, as the Word made flesh, has come to dwell with humanity. And through the turning the water into wine, he had 6 water jars, each of which had 120 to 180 gallons. He had those filled with water. They were turned to wine. And the idea is that is an abundance of wine. And so this story is Jesus is revealing that the abundance of God has come to humanity, and in him is dwelling in the midst of humanity. For us, and of course, with the risen Christ in our midst, we continue to have the abundance of God with us in our lives. Now, the second reading was from 1 Corinthians chapter 12. There's going to be a series from these chapters 12, 13, and I think maybe 14 of 1 Corinthians assigned as the second reading for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And this one talks about there being a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit. So the idea being that just because not everybody can do the same thing doesn't mean, number one, that the Spirit isn't at work in their lives, and number two, it doesn't mean that you could cast them aside and say, well, you're not necessary, you're not important. Paul is saying the same Spirit empowers all of these gifts that can be used for the common good. Okay, so and highlight the common good in here. So the common good could be for the good of the community. It could be for the good of the worship experience or the learning of the faith community. But he names a variety of gifts. He says, to one is given the utterance of wisdom, the utterance of knowledge, to another the gifts of healing, working of miracles, prophecy, discernment of spirits. Now, Paul was most likely speaking specifically of gifts that he knew were being expressed in the particular community in Corinth that he was talking to. But as we understand this in our time, we're not limited to just those ones specifically that Paul mentioned, because we have certainly seen people who have a variety of different gifts and abilities that have been very beneficial to the common good. So we could talk about teaching. We could talk about wisdom. Either there's people that you can go to when you're trying to reflect upon life and figure out what you want to do about this or that situation, and there's people you can go to because you feel like they have wisdom and they say something that helps you in some way, even if it isn't telling you what to do, but giving you some wisdom to discern what direction you want to go. But there's the gifts of cooking and baking to be able to feed people. There's the gift of mechanical abilities to be able to fix things that might go wrong in a house or in a building like a church building, to do plumbing or electrical work, or being able to build things, or any of those kinds of things that might need to be done to keep somebody's house, or to keep a building like a church or some other facility being used for the good of people in the community, to keep it up to code, and keep it safe and everything. As I said, the gift of teaching, the gift of listening, the gift, certainly there are gifts like preaching, and praying, and but there's gift of art and music, and art takes so many forms. Music can be instrumental or voice. Art can be sculpture or painting, or quilting or knitting or crocheting, or making things, wreaths and stuff like that. It can be outside gardening, with vegetables, gardening flowers, taking care of the property. So there's so many and I'm not even naming all of the gifts that we have, but here Paul is saying that the Spirit gives us all of these different gifts that can be used for the common good. Imagine then the use of all of these different gifts that we could use, if we could use them to benefit humanity in some way, or to benefit the people of the congregation in some way. And what amazing things God can do through these gifts that God has given us, if we were able to find ways to put the gifts together in a way that does something that will help serve somebody, or bring about some kind of experience or service that we didn't have before. So a number of years ago, we had these exact scriptures on a Sunday, and I took these glass jars, 6 of them, and I had them out during worship, and then I gave folks little red pieces of paper, and I had them write down some of the different gifts and abilities that they had, and I gave them more than one piece of paper, because we generally have multiple gifts and abilities. So to write them down and then fold them, and then when they came up for communion, to stuff them in the 6 jars. And so that could visually, and then over the Sundays throughout the rest of the season, I kind of, because they were, crammed together and stuffed in so that everybody could get them into the jars, but I kind of pulled them out a little bit and unfolded them and then put them back in. And so, at that point they were overflowing. And so that we could see visually the abundance of God that God has given us through the gifts God has given us. And we could imagine then what we could possibly do with those. I still have those jars up on my on the top of my bookshelves here in the office. But I realized too that was done so long ago, that so many of the gifts and skills that were put into those jars aren't with us anymore. Some have passed away, some have moved away. And so if we would do something like that again, which the moment has passed kind of, but I'm just giving you a picture. If we would do that again, it would look so much different, because while some people and their gifts and talents are no longer in this community, over these years, we've also gained a whole new group of people with their gifts and skills and abilities that are different than those that are in those jars from the past. And so it would look differently, but it would still be overflowing. And I think that's the point, to remember that God's abundance comes in so many different forms. And one of those is through the gifts and talents that God gives to God's people to use for the common good. If we could work together and find out what different gifts and abilities everybody has, and find ways to put those together into some kind of some kind of outreach ministry, or even help people plug into things that are already going on. And we could, as a church, through some of our members, plug into some of those different ministries that could make a huge difference. But that's an important aspect, is not only recognizing those gifts and talents and the abundance of them, but then using them for the common good, either of our own folks here at this church or the common good in our community and for our neighbors around us. So I give you that to think about in relation to these scriptures, and you're welcome to give your own thoughts and ideas in the comments. So thank you so much for watching. God bless.